Misunderstanding. Among the standards of faith that Christians often find confusing, there is one I'd like to discuss. Throughout our lives, things sometimes go as we wish, and at other times, we experience failure and frustration. Depending on our individual states of faith, when we fail, we may reflect on our own mistakes or blame God. And when we succeed, we might give glory to God or claim the glory for ourselves. Without clear standards, we can mistake all actions as either divinely ordained or as solely our own doing. Therefore, without the right standards or attitude in faith, we risk falling into resentment when self-reflection is needed and walking the path of pride when it's time to give thanks and glory. In the Bible, figures like Solomon fell into corruption through prosperity, and Hezekiah walked the path of pride for the same reason. Similarly, we too can easily find ourselves in such predicaments. A believer might be in greater danger during times of prosperity than in adversity. This is because when there are hopes or objectives to be achieved, one prays and strives towards them. However, once attained, it becomes easy to fall into corruption or sin. Therefore, a poor saint is less likely to fall or lose their faith compared to a wealthy one. As often, those who prosper and seek glory for themselves are more prone to stumble or become corrupt. Though prosperity is a blessing granted by God, over time, the narrative shifts to highlight one's own efforts and labor as the reason for their success. The claim then becomes that their prosperity is due to their fasting, prayers, or actions, ultimately attributing all glory to themselves. This is the very essence of seeking one's own glory. When such words begin to emerge from our lips, the place for God disappears, and the glory that should be returned to Him vanishes. Whether we have prayed, given offerings, or dedicated ourselves, seeking our own glory instead of giving glory to God, who allowed us to perform these acts, reveals our misplaced focus. Furthermore, while outwardly we may claim that everything is done by God, inwardly pondering over our efforts and hardships to glorify ourselves demonstrates a duplicity in our faith. Listening to such individuals, one might notice that their speech begins with gratitude to God, but ultimately concludes with self-glorification. Essentially, they claim that their actions prompted God to work in certain ways, verbally giving glory to God, but in reality, pursuing their own glory. At first glance, both prosperity and adversity that come our way may seem like the outcomes of our choices and plans. But within these events, there is undeniably God's guidance and providence, as well as the consequences of our decisions. This is similar to how having a driver's license and the ability to drive are useless without a car or roads. Likewise, without God's preceding grace, our zeal and efforts are futile. Therefore, it is when our efforts align with the direction God has planned for our lives that we find prosperity. When we attain prosperity, we should not seek our own glory, but suitably give glory back to God. Living with this attitude and posture, our lives will be more likely to encounter blessings, and the probability of failure decreases. Thus, understanding this principle of faith, I hope you will always walk a life filled with prosperity and blessings.
구독, 좋아요, 알림 설정 해주세요. Subscribe, like, set notifications.